A very good evening and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the program. Our way of life has been thoroughly disrupted. Many things come to a sudden stop. New terms like social distancing have gained currency. Face masks are becoming a common sight. And all that before the lockdowns are lifted. Are we looking at a new normal? Will our social interactions ever be the same again? In many cultures, people hug in greeting. Is this about to change? Today we will talk about the impact on culture through the eyes of someone who sadly lost his father during this time. Eric Mwine Mugaju is was a student at the London School of Economics, but he is a freelance journalist in London as we speak. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Josephine, for inviting me on your show.
My deepest condolences for the loss of your father, especially during this time when you are unable to be physically present to send him off. Could you share with me the events as they unfolded?
Josephine, it was very early in the morning because of this lockdown. You know, we have extra time to sleep. So my phone rings. It's 9 o'clock in the morning 2 weeks ago, and it's my sister. And my sister usually has a habit of calling me very early in the morning, and I usually send her an automatic message, I'll call you back. But she calls again, and before I pick up, my other sister in Uganda is on the phone as well. So I started fearing the worst, and I pick up, and she announces the bad news that my father has passed away. And it's a shock, of course, and you don't have things keep coming in your mind, and it hits you that you are not going to be able to travel because of COVID-19. I switch off. I tell my sister I'll call her back, and I start thinking about things that we're going to do. So we're living in London with 3 other siblings. So I decided to call my sisters and see what else we could do. And when I picked up the phone, my other sister was also screaming and telling me, oh, we cannot travel, what are we going to do? So in that moment, that's when you think that actually things are very difficult worldwide.
Yeah.
So in normal times, if I had an experience of losing a loved one when I'm abroad, in normal times what would happen is in London here, you tell your friends, they get together, they comfort you in your home, in your house, and then they arrange for you to travel back and be able to bury whoever you've lost. This time my father, who was old, it would have been a big event here in London and in Uganda. So friends would have come, gather with me, contribute towards my travel and go. And here I am, I'm in London, and I'm not even able to meet with my siblings because they are all, one of them is also self-isolating, having developed some symptoms of COVID-19.
Oh, I thought they were with you all together in the flat at that time. Those your siblings.
On my own. I was on my own because we live in different parts of London.
Oh dear.
In normal times, we would have gathered in one flat. We would have gathered either at my sister's or at mine, but this time, my sister was also recovering from treatment of cancer. She's a vulnerable person, so we can't visit her. And my other brother's got symptoms, so we can't visit them, so we are all separated in this time of mourning where we have to keep it on the phone talking to each other. So that's how it happened. In normal times would be 2 minutes, would be we get on trains and meet with everyone and mourn together and comfort each other.
What would normally happen if you were back home, or if it had happened you'd have traveled back home, and what would then have happened? Also contrasting with what actually happened with you unable to attend the funeral to make that journey home. But also, before you even answer that, you're in your flat, so your friends can't come and visit. All you're taking is phone calls.
What would have happened, I would have quickly booked a ticket and traveled back home. Usually barriers back home where I come from in Ishaka in southwestern Uganda, burials, if you're a person of my father who's old and a very well-respected person on the village, will take about 3 days. But in our unique circumstances where we have to travel from the United Kingdom and some other relatives from America or somewhere, it would take a minimum of 5 days because we have 2 days window of traveling quickly and then getting back to Kampala and then again traveling in the village. And then later on in the evening, I managed to call my sisters, who I got one sister living in Uganda. So I managed to call her, and what she told me is they cannot even travel because there has been a curfew. They cannot travel past 6 o'clock. So, and at home in the village, usually people would have gathered in the compound. As soon as they get the news, they would have gathered, comfort my mother, be there until everyone in the evening comes. But this is not also possible because information is been given by the government that they must not gather.
Yeah.
So in this case, my mother is on her own.
I know that they're restricting the number of people that can attend a funeral, and I guess this also goes to the number of people that can just really come to the house. We are used to having vigils, and so that's not a thing that's happening anymore with the neighbors not able to come in and family not able to come in as well. What was your mother doing within this period? What has it been like for her?
We are such a big family. At the compound, there's already 13, 14 people living. So if they are saying that at the funeral there must be 10, and I know there are some compounds where they live about 20 of them. So my mother, I managed to call her later in the evening, but obviously I was on the phone earlier making sure that people were not going to get in trouble by gathering. I found out that, usually among the Banyankole culture, when you go and feel sorry for someone, there is hugs, there is all this, but this has stopped. So I call her and the whole mood is very quiet, and she's telling me that people are greeting her from distance. Here in London, funerals can be only invited, and in our culture, the whole village is invited by default when someone is lost someone. So when this finishes, it's a question of whether this COVID-19 will change our culture, and funerals are almost the same as Europe, where you're invited and usually people stay for 45 minutes having a drink in a pub or on a funeral, and then they go, and then there you on your own.
How are you handling now, you and your siblings who are there?
Yeah, we still haven't met yet. I managed on the day, we managed to use technology. We managed to use technology to be able to speak all together at the same time. We actually managed to use technology again to be there at the funeral, but the mood was quite different.
Yeah.
A person of my father would have had hundreds of people attend the funeral. They would have been. He's a Christian, but he also embraces the African communal culture of being together at such a difficult time. But for us here, we are able to use technology to talk to each other every day. So we are coping very well. Things are getting on very well, and we also managed to be able to watch events as they were unfolding, rather in a very peculiar and unique manner.
Tell me about watching that funeral on your phone, on your computer, on Zoom.
Culturally, we are supposed to attend our father's funeral. And then, with this technology and hospitals, we thought maybe an idea came from my sister and me that we could have the body in a mortuary and preserve it, and then when all this is over, we could travel. But this was rejected, and my other older sister says to me, we cannot do this. We cannot lock down our community first. And I sat there thinking, what did she mean by this? And it's again about our culture, which is when someone dies on the village, nothing happens. People will gather, people will come to that family, and they will comfort them. And it depends if it's an old person like my father, there will be 9 days of mourning. And if it's a child, not to say that children are not important, but it's only 3 days, and then they will perform certain rites and leave. This is not. We're not able to do that because we thought that if we delay that, we will lock down our community for months, that this is what we don't know when it's going to happen. So we decided to go on and bury. So I've been using Zoom since the outbreak of COVID-19, and I set up an invite so you could host about 300 people at the same time. So the evening before, because my father died on the way to the hospital, so they had kept the body at the hospital, so he had to return back home the evening before. So I decided to think, let me see what we can do. It came to my mind that I can use Zoom to be able to be home. So I did a test on when that was happening. I have 2 nieces, and the good thing about technology is they had smartphones. Yeah. So I sent them an invite, and we thought it could work. So on the day, again, you never had a funeral happening at 9 o'clock. So I had set up the Zoom call to midday so we could do the tests, and usually the afternoon burial as usual.
For all the people, I'm told.
Possible.
Burials for all the people are in the afternoons.
All burials culturally, I think, is in the afternoons, but the officials insisted that we must bury at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
So I had to change the time, and it was shocking for many people. So we arrived in the morning, we arrived at my father's compound, and literally you could hear nothing. You could see scattered people. It's not normal. I feel like this is not normal. But inside my screen, I can see many people, more people than the ones at the funeral, and I could see the emotions of people more closely on the screen because I was the one in charge. And then everyone else back home is distant. And that's when it hits me that things are really going to change in terms of how funerals will be held. I can't speculate, but it's going to have a big impact.
Were you able to speak at the funeral, even from your Zoom, from the angle of technology? Were any of the siblings able to speak?
Because they give where speeches are usually given on, especially my dad, who was very old, he died at 94, would have taken hours of people speaking and giving lavish praises, but they said that we must spend 45 minutes.
Wow.
So usually what we did, there was a small speech, which was my sister and my brother just saying a few words, and it was emotions pouring down when they actually started. The few people that were in the compound started singing my father's favorite song and clapping, because he usually did that. But we were not able to give a speech live at the funeral, but we were able to listen to see my mother, who's also elderly, lay a flower on her husband, our dad, and say final goodbyes.
How's your mother handling with all of this now, and what are her thoughts on this, on how things are being done now?
We were very much worried about her because in our culture, a week of mourning of where nothing is done, people are coming to comfort her, and this time they are not. But we are lucky to have a big family that after the burial, she's still got people around her who are close relatives, my sister's children and my other two brothers who are living in Uganda. Now, there was a twist as well because by the time they left Kampala to go to the village, the car was only allowed to carry 3 people, and our nieces are many. My dad was survived with around 75 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Wow. So my family had left other families at their business in Kampala where they live, and they had to been given a few days to travel, but they had left family there. But we thought it wise not to leave our mother in the village because she would be a bit more lonely because people are not allowed to go there. Yet again, culture being shattered is my mother should have stayed there, mourn her husband, but she had to quickly move so that she could be with more people at my sister's residence in Kampala. But she is coping very well. We still continue to speak to her on a daily basis using technology. She's actually amazed on how she's able to speak to every other of her children daily.
Well, once again, we'd like to thank technology because we are able to also get to you and hear you share this story of what it's been like to have a funeral and to attend a funeral from so far away during this time. I'm sure it was extremely, extremely difficult, but at the very least you got to actually watch it happen. Thank you so much, Eric. We are going to take a short break. When we return, we'll be joined by Professor Mercy Miriam Bentangare, who is a teacher of ethnic arts, and she's been listening to this conversation. She'll be coming in to share some more insights into culture and what we stand to lose during these times. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. And tonight we are speaking about what the new normal looks like culture-wise. Earlier we had on the show Eric Mwinemugaju speaking to us about his experience after he lost his father here in Uganda, Eric and 3 of his siblings being in London. And joining us now on the show still we have Eric, but we also have Professor Mercy Miriam Bentangare, who is an author and a teacher of ethnic arts, joining us. Professor Ntangare, welcome and thank you for joining us. Yes, we can see you. All right, could you, I think you were listening in and we briefed you about what Eric's story is. What do you make of all of this?
Thank you, Eric, for sharing your grief with us and condolences once again. Now, losing a dear one certainly is a very, very personal experience in many, many ways. But also when you lose someone and then you cannot bury or say the very last goodbyes to them, it becomes like a never-lasting death. In many cases, it becomes very, very hard to get over it. In the case of culture, what does it take away from us as cultural beings? Because you have not completed that process, because you have not completed the burial, so to say. Some people may, if they take it too much inside themselves, they may even start getting hallucinations, may even start blaming themselves, even if it's not it's not a situation which you could control. But maybe some people start saying, had I known, had I known. And since some of our beliefs are such that we believe that dead, when they die, they don't completely die, that you are still in communion with them. So the living person still has that debt with him. to complete the burial, and the more anxious or the more deficient the person becomes in not fulfilling the date, maybe the more unstable his life, his world will become. But of course, I believe Eric will try to get as much support, social support, even within the present time of the lockdown as possible, so that you don't end up like a mad person on the road, or somebody who doesn't care about humanity anymore because you think now you couldn't complete that obligation which was on your side.
And also, speaking about psychological closure, we've been conditioned to appreciate being present, you know, for the final goodbye, to be able to see our loved ones off when they pass away. Eric not being able to be there physically, as you've said, Dr. Ntangari, but also to be able to watch it from afar. I don't know if it puts a certain kind of distance, even emotionally or psychologically. Eric, what was it like for you?
I think when we talk about culture, I was, you know, my father was 95 and elder, so you at one point you expect the natural thing to happen, and then you start imagining on how good you can send your father in a cultural way, in an unexpected way according to your culture. Now, being away and watching this happen on Zoom, I became removed from the culture. I just started wondering, what would my father make of all this? First of all, you are having many people watch live than you see in your compound, which is unprecedented. For me, there was a little bit of removal from what would have happened, which would have been hundreds of people in my father's compound, people saying good things and stories that they remember in speeches, which did not happen. But, you know, certainly a cultural change where you're seeing people emotionally on your monitor, closed monitor, as we are seeing each other right now. So that element of, as Dr. Massey said earlier, or a cultural element of community togetherness was a little bit missing, watching people scattered around in an empty, almost an empty compound.
And, you know, we know for funerals and weddings, they draw a large number of people, not even people who are really, really close to each other, but like you say, it's that spirit of togetherness. Do we stand to lose this, especially now when we're dealing with lockdowns, isolation, quarantine? People are being told literally, stay away from each other.
I think this is going to have a big impact on how we move on from this COVID-19, because we are here in London. You are allowed to move and buy grocery or something, but people are following what they call social distancing, which I don't even know how it is called in Runyankore. So people, as soon as you get close to someone, they move away. And you just start imagining what will happen when this all ends. Are people going to have a way of doing things? Because I hear there is a lot of stigma now going on if you've had COVID. Will people be shunned away? In regards to my situation, is what will happen is, you know, as we are supposed to be, if someone loses loved ones, they are supposed to go and embrace others, but now they have been able to use Zoom. So is it going to be like next time I hear my friend lose someone, I'll just give him a call rather than going to be there as I'm required to? So certainly culture is not static, it changes. There are certain elements that have changed, but it's very slow. But this COVID-19 has hit on our culture very hard.
Dr. Ntangari, before you even make a submission on that, do you want to tell us what social distancing is in Runyankore? Because you're the person of languages. Maybe there is a word and we don't know it.
okweha omwanya.
Okay. What?
That's the closest which I can maybe say. I hadn't actually thought about it in Onyankore. But social distancing means that there is a gap between the people. In other words, they are no longer actually society. And that one I think is very, very dangerous. Like Eric says, it's not even only in times of grief that you need to feel each other through an embrace. If it is a time of happiness, when you are greeting a person, you want fear, that's why we hug. You want fear to touch, and then that's when you look at each other in the face directly, very closely, and then that's when you know that it is actually peaceful, or everybody is at peace, as we normally would translate the word of horror. Everybody is at peace. Now, are we already seeing this one? I think we are seeing this one because sometimes when I go to the supermarket, for example, or the market to buy the vegetable markets, people, even when you give them money, you are standing at a distance and you are stretching yourself to give money, as if there is something you are fearing, both of you, but something which you cannot touch, something which you don't see. But because we have we've been told to put a social distance. And I believe even after we get out of this lockdown, it's going to continue.
We also spoke to Mr. James Tumsime, the Executive Director of Igongo Cultural Center and Country Club in Bihari, Mbara, and he is also the founder of Fountain Group of Companies. And we asked him if he saw some significant cultural changes in these times, and if he thought that with the passage of time, life would get back to what it used to be.
You are welcome, Josephine. My name is James Tumsime. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm in culture, media and humor. I'm an advocate, a strong one of traditional African values. So I'm an enthusiast about culture. Culture is all about the lifestyle of people, how they express themselves, how they celebrate, how they mourn, how they dress. And when there's a situation that is restrictive and does not allow you to exercise your way of life as you have always known it, then I think that is a change in life, a change in culture, a change in lifestyle. Culture is inherited. It is acquired from one generation and passed on to another generation. And the way we express ourselves, the way we transmit, the way we educate our younger generation is based on what we have ourselves learned. So when there are conditions that cannot allow us to transmit that culture, the way we have acquired it, our lifestyle, then there is a change.
We know that technology cannot replace the face-to-face interactions, but technology is sometimes the next best thing because it, when it's impractical to be able to meet people like the situation that we are in, should we not try to identify and conserve the values that we have from our cultures and customs and integrate them with the new technologies that are there? Is that an acceptable compromise?
How can you take an embrace to the technology, for example? Of
There's
course,
an
we can
emoji.
wave, we can put our hands there, but there is something which is missing.
You can send
There
an
is
emoji.
something which is missing.
So there's no compromise there for you, Dr. Tangare?
There is no compromise, but of course we see that also the danger in COVID, because none of us, I think, knows exactly what it is. We are all talking about the symptoms. If we knew, of course, we know that when you get it, then it makes you very bad, and then you can die. So we cannot risk. So of course, it's bad that we have to sustain this kind of behavior for some time. The other day when they said even when schools will reopen, because even universities, I think, will be reopening at that very time. I was making a joke, how do you stand and teach wearing a mask? If you are going to make an emotional expression, you have this mask over your mouth, it becomes a bit tricky. So life, yes, is changing. We are still learning how to cope with the changes, but I think we are leaving being cultural. This is what I see, that we are losing our culture. The bad thing is that we are losing it not gradually and willingly, but instantly. We are being cut from it, from some of the cultural values, some of the cultural practices.
What do we stand to lose when you say we are losing our culture and we're losing it instantly? What exactly are you talking about?
We are standing to lose humanity. We are losing our hearts, our souls, our very souls, what makes us people. I told you on Saturday I was attending a scientific wedding representing my mother-in-law. But even in the church, with my husband, we are seated very far apart. Then even we couldn't hug the newlyweds. Even for the present, it's as if we are sending it on a piece of stick, as if you don't want to touch, as if the other people are the ones with maybe some danger, or you yourself, you are the one with the danger. Already you are losing a sense of humanity. And so what makes us human if we are not human beings?
Eric, what do you think about that?
For me, as I pointed out earlier, and complementing what Masis just said, is the humanity. But I just want to point out that cultures change. They do change, but not at the speed that we have seen. For example, those cultural practices are not done for fun. They are done for certain reasons. If I can point out one cultural element of that we do among the Banyankore, is the mourning of the elders, which lasts longer, meaning that we don't have some services, like bereavement services, that can be used if people lose their loved ones. So what you gain from that culture of people coming to you is comfort and giving you company, and they gradually, they don't suddenly leave as you're given 5 minutes to say your condolences and leave. They gradually start leaving. And now on the 9th day, for example, the fireplace where people sit, for those Christians, they will be singing, and for those who like to have a drink culturally, they will have their drink, and they will suddenly leave. If it was a parish, you will start going back to their normal work. The close village will have a week to go back to their work. And then the family finally will also have their time to do some practices. One example is, we call it Oxigorofu, which is gauged on the fact that now the family is ready to move on with life. And they do certain practices, like among the Banyankore, they do the shaving of the head, for example, of all the siblings, which is an indication of, like, now this is a new beginning. Even though those things can be seen as, in a modern way of looking at things, if they are seen as some pointless exercise, but when you think of them, they do really have a significance. And there is a danger of all this being wiped out because of how things have changed as a result of COVID-19.
All right. Your final thoughts, both of you.
If I can draw on just something small. For example, we have a proverb. If I translated it directly, it's as if when you bury somebody, as quickly as the person has died, you are burying that person as if the person is a thief. But you can't bury an elder like that. And of course, COVID is causing us almost to do that. As soon as a person is dead, you don't touch, you leave the people to wash the body and dress, then immediately you are thinking of putting that body in the grave.
I will ask you both just to sign out with your final thoughts on where we are with culture in relation to COVID-19. what we stand to lose and how we can preserve what we can. I'll start with you, Eric.
I do think, as I mentioned out, I pointed out the importance of those cultural practices, and we need to be aware of them as we are going through this. And obviously, these measures are in to protect their lives, as is being said, stay home, so that you don't spread the thing. But what I do think that we need to worry about is there is no replacing what we have lost. So what we need to do is to move out of COVID-19 slowly and try to regain the cultural values of practices and the things we already did. As I said, we will try and make a funeral when this all is over. But I still wonder whether this will be the same as if I was to personally say my goodbyes to my father. But I do think that we can try and go back gradually, and not to see technology as have replaced people or has replaced the emotions of how people when they meet each other. With that, I think I'll listen to what other people reflections they have.
All along in human history, we get subjected all sorts of constraints, changes. Traditionally, we were affected by weather, we were affected by wars, and this disrupt our lifestyle. But we tend to go back to a new normal. Every time there is a peace, there is stability, we adjust to a new normal, but still bringing along with us some vestiges of the previous culture. If you look at the Bible, the way the Israelis have survived centuries and centuries and centuries of disruption, but they still celebrate the Passover, which was over 4,000 years ago, but in a different way, in a modified way. So even ourselves, we shall continue changing, adjusting to new normals in our culture, but we shall most likely retain the foundations that are required to identify our culture. Dress may change because there are new materials, but still we tend to dress in a particular way that we can be identified. Food will change, but we shall still retain some of the basics. If you're in Nyankore, you still talk of millet and milk and beans. If you're in Uganda, you talk of matoke. So you may change, but not completely. So you adjust. Weddings, previously in Nyankore, we had disasters that would kill all our cattle. And instead of giving bride price in form of cows, we give berries. If you have heard of Izuganyonza, 500 years ago. But when the cows returned, we went back to giving cows as a bride price. So we keep adjusting and adjusting. Of course, we have been also influenced by new religions. We have been influenced by education. So this cosmopolitan life, all those have influenced us. But if we are committed to maintaining that historical identity, we adjust and fit into the new normals, the new word that we have acquired now with COVID. So the new normal will come, but it will have its roots in the old normal, and the same with culture.
All right, Dr. Ntangare?
We are very fast losing who we are. But again, as Eric has said, yes, we accept that reality. But as soon as COVID-19 is out, consciously, we must make a conscious effort to try to regain some of our values as Ugandans, some of our values which make us who we are as people. And then, of course, other things like maybe methods of work, those ones we can gain from the use of the technology. But certainly technology will not replace our values, will not replace our souls, will not replace who we are inside us.
All right, thank you so much, both of you, for taking the time to speak with us. Eric, thank you very much for sharing your grief with us, as Dr. Ntangare said, and also opening up to us. And thank you very much, Professor Ntangare, for taking the time to speak with us on such short notice.
Okay, thank you very much for hosting us. Eric, still all the best, and we continue to pray for you and all others who are in a similar situation.
Thank you very much, Josephine, for allowing me on the program.
Well, that brings us to the end of our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all of the people who participated in this episode. Coming up is NTV Weekend Edition with Sandra Twinovideo.